Welcome to Real Estate Meets AI. I'm Sandeep Ahuja, CEO and co-founder of Cove, the AI-first architecture practice. If you're curious about how AI is reshaping buildings and spaces from the inside out, you're in the right place. Here's what fascinates me about consultants who advise on AI in real estate. They see everything, every company's playbook, every failed pilot, every breakthrough nobody's talking about yet. Today, I'm talking with Alex Wolkomir, a partner at McKinsey, who co-authored the report that put a number on what Gen AI could unlock for our industries. We're talking close to $180 billion. Here's also the guy who recently told a room full of real estate executives that use cases are actually the wrong way to do AI. So let's dive right into it. Alex, welcome to Real Estate Meets AI. A quick intro for folks who don't know you. You're a partner at McKinsey Company, based in New York, leading the firm's work at the intersection of AI, digital strategy, and real estate globally. Before McKinsey, you were at JP Morgan and Oliver Wyman. You did masters from Stanford in design and engineering. Oh, and somewhere in there, you went to Jordan to work on innovation for refugees with the International Rescue Committee during the Syrian crisis. That is not a typical consulting resume. But here's what I actually want to know. You describe yourself as a food junkie. So if you had to cook one dish to win over a skeptical real estate CEO who doesn't believe in AI, what are you making?
That's an interesting question. I think it has to be hearty and simple. Probably like a braised short rib with mashed potatoes. That's something I feel like I made a bunch of times, kind of have that pattern down. And I think there's something around, just the simplicity, the heartiness, and it kind of gets to the core of real good raw flavors. So,
I love that. Real good raw flavors.
Yeah, and it's
I can
down to the
almost
basics.
feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess in some ways similar to I think where we're kind of at with AI, which is like getting to the basics, getting to the workflows and to what really matters versus all the hype, just really leaning into the raw simplicity of things.
I love that you say that. So obviously, you've been advising the biggest real estate firms in the world on this stuff. You've seen the hypes, you've seen the pilots, you've seen the wins. So we'll kick us off with what we call the AI meter. On a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is AI averse and 5 is AI forward, where do you think the industry is at right now when it comes to AI? And tell me why you picked that number.
I would probably say, on the whole, the industry is probably at around a 2.5 to a 3 out of 5. And I would say there are some players or folks in the industry that are probably closer to a 4 in like selective pockets. I think there are a lot of teams out there that are experimenting, trying different pilots, doing different things. You know, they're summarizing leases, they're drafting marketing comms, they're thinking about reporting and how to make sure all the data is really clean. Some folks that are really pushing it that step further of having AI actually run in the workflows, taking action, and we're kind of moving out of this world of I'm going to give it a prompt and ask AI something to actual action and doing with the right guardrails, with the right governance. So I'd say broadly, a lot of folks experimenting, a lot of piloting, a lot of really exciting companies in the world pushing the boundaries. And I'd say a few folks that are doing it right and reaching for that 4 in my mind.
That's really exciting. So for everyone that's listening in, at least this is what I hear. You're not behind. Everyone's somewhere in the middle there. Most folks closer to that 2.5, 3-ish mark. So if you feel like you're behind, you're probably not. You might be right there in the middle somewhere. So long as you're doing something with it is at least what I'm hearing.
That's absolutely right. I mean, a big part of it is just the experimenting, the learning, the exposure, to your point, Sandeep.
Love that. So let's get into it. Obviously, you co-authored McKinsey's landmark report on Gen AI in real estate, the one that said that technology could unlock $110 to $180 billion of value in the industry. Now, that was late 2023. Now in 2026, where are we on that journey? Has the reality matched what we projected? Are we over it? Are we under it? Like, where are we?
Coincidentally, we actually have our next version of that report coming out early next month. So a good lead in that we're actually on the precipice of some new numbers. When we just redid a lot of that analysis, we looked across, I think it was 48 countries with like the McKinsey Global Institute, which is McKinsey's kind of sister org think tank. But looking at labor productivity, looking at, as we think about some of the new things AI is doing around agentic systems that may have just been ideas back in 2023. When we look across real estate and construction, we think globally the opportunity is actually even bigger now. So we're more in the realm of like 400 to 550 billion, if you think globally.
Right.
So I actually think where are we is that it was true, and in many ways we were conservative, because I was kind of thinking about generative AI, the use cases of the moment in 2023. that were very much of that mindset of help me understand, ask a question, kind of go in that mindset. And I think we're in a very different world now, sitting here in 2026, where it's really around help me get it done and let AI act. So I think, if anything, we're in an exciting new world where there's a lot more possibility. And I think we're starting to really learn where there are pockets where AI can really be transformative in terms of how real estate is doing business as usual.
I love that. And it's so exciting to hear that it's so much greater than even you and the team that put that report together anticipated when you did that work. Do you think we're going to be here again in the next 3 years, or do you think we'll be there faster? That we were like, oh my gosh, it's actually, maybe 1.5 trillion. We significantly underestimated it yet again. What do you think?
The opportunity may get bigger. There's also just natural economic growth. I think the real question is, that's the number of what value is available. And it's really going to be, how do folks actually operationalize and move to capture it? Because that number, in some ways is the target. If everybody were to go out, adopt it in the ideal way, capture the value. But I think to your prior question with the AI scale, folks are in very different places. So there's a acceleration pace. There's some of the natural forces of the industry that will determine how quickly we get there. But I would say I am personally optimistic that I feel like we're moving in the right direction, and there's a buzz and an energy in the industry now around AI that even 2 years ago, I think it's been step change in terms of what I have been feeling and hearing. I mean, I was at the International Builders Conference down in Orlando last week, and AI was everywhere. It was all anybody was talking about amongst, I think there were 70, 80,000 folks down there. But it's palpable in all corners of the industry right now.
Yeah, that's definitely what we're seeing too. But it's all about not just talking about it. What you said earlier on resonated so closely with me. It's not about the hype. It's not about buzzwords. It's not about, can you use Chat GPT or Claude or something, it's like, well, what is it meaningfully doing for your business? And that's, I think, the thing that most real estate companies and developers that we talk to, which we talk to hundreds every week, that's what they're focused on. They're like, good, your AI powered architecture firm. What does that even mean for me? I don't want to do AI just for the heck of it.
And an outcome is not people are using an AI tool, or it's minutes, logged in, or folks logging in daily. It's, what are the actual business outcomes? Like, is the lease execution happening faster? Are we executing our, maintenance and work orders more efficiently, adhering to SLAs? In a construction project, are we reducing the number of days to delivery and not having mismatched vendor scheduling in terms of when the plumber shows up versus the carpenter for things that have to be sequenced? There's a little bit at times, I feel, in organizations of they get fixated on AI means people use AI versus the real KPIs are what's actually driving value for the company when you think about those, end state metrics that matter.
Most definitely. I couldn't agree more. Now, obviously, in this report, which it sounds like is soon to be an outdated version of the report, because there's a new one coming out in April. So for April. So for all that are listening in, definitely March. So everyone that's listening in, go check out that report. But in the original one, you laid out the 2x2 framework, right? Like the 2 quick wins plus 2 aspirational use cases. So give me a real example. What's a quick win that's actually paying off for firms that you're advising? You kind of touched on it with real metrics, but maybe a little bit more.
I'd say 2 really tangible wins that we're seeing. I'll give you 2 examples. One is, I think, how do you have, whether it's the sales office or the leasing office, be on 24/7 and not just kind of be like voicemail that responds, but actually do things in the systems that matter. Book tours, help match folks to properties that may fit them in their life stage from a segmentation perspective, qualify leads and help folks figure out where they should go, but have that actual interaction. But I think there's a ton hitting that top of line in terms of how do you kind of meet people where they are. Because a lot of times I'm searching for my home for my apartment. That might be happening, 10 p.m. at night, browsing around on my phone, having these questions. And the chances are someone's not there at 10 p.m. to answer my question about, financial qualification, or answer my question about if I do these 3 modifications on the home I want to buy, does that delay the delivery timing? So the more you can really get to the AI being able to act, I think it really transforms the sales funnel in a lot of asset classes. Another very real example we're seeing is around facilities and property management tasks. So things like when a maintenance ticket comes in, let's say there's a flood in the apartment. Can AI actually look at the ticket, have some judgment on what needs to happen, and then you build a little agentic system where you might have one agent whose sole job is to figure out what the next best action is for a ticket. If that next best action is let's email the particular stakeholder, there's an agent that picks it up and sends the email. If that next best action is find a vendor, it pings the vendor management system that you have in place, looks at vendor ratings, looks at potential bids and costs, and is able to find someone to triage it. It drafts an update to the tenant that we recognize there's an issue, we're having it in place, and we're going to take care of it quickly. But how you really start to automate that to a point where you might not need someone to actually touch the ticket versus it can be auto triaged. I think we're seeing similar things in construction world, where when you think about everything that happens there from a project perspective, you have the whole journey from the RFI to the submittal to approvals to schedule changes. And we're going to think about all the things that happen in that project loop. But it's all really around how do you not drop the thread? And how do you keep things connected, draft documents at different points, update logs with what happened. But those micro tasks are all things that AI agents are primed to be able to take on and make sure those threads aren't dropped.
Yeah.
And I think broadly, all those examples, Sandeep, in my mind, I think to your earlier point about use cases, point to a reality of change is not happening at the small use case level. It's happening at the workflow level. And it's how do you chain together use cases, chain together agents to actually deliver the work in a fundamentally new way.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, the way you kind of bring the whole thread through, because I was curious. You literally wrote the playbook on use cases, and now you're like, no, it's not about use cases. It's about how use cases come together to a workflow. And the thing that I hear in many of these examples, at least what I pull away, is also as consumers of, like you gave the example, if you're looking for a house or what have you, we're becoming impatient too, right? Because we do have everything on our fingertips. I can just order, like food and it better be here. I can order groceries and they better be here. I ordered some baby diapers in the afternoon. They were here by the evening and I needed them to be here, which is my expectations have evolved. And I really think that that's the change that people are expecting to see and people are observing. I'll give you my very raw, non-real estate example, non-architecture example. My dishwasher broke yesterday, and I put a quote on this app called Thumbtack, where there's a whole bunch of different vendors that can quote, and then they'll come out and fix it. I live in this old 1920s home, and I just needed someone who understood that in the 1920s home, anything is possible. So be prepared. And the vendor I ended up picking was A, the one that responded the fastest. B, he clearly had automation and AI built in, because it was asking me and there's a difference between AI and automation, but I could tell that there was actually some tiny layer of AI layered into his response messaging because it was a touch smarter. And I was able to get everything that I needed, including a quote, in like 5 minutes. And now he's going to come this afternoon. Hopefully not during this podcast. But all that means to say is that real tininess that makes it all so valid. Like I can see that that's what people are connecting to, even with the tenants.
Absolutely. It's all about, I think, two things. One is there's big consumer behavior change and user behavior change, whether that's in enterprise tech, whether that's in consumer, but how we search, how we interact with technology as we move to more of these conversational interfaces. The way you think about UX, UI is totally different. And I think both opportunities and also tremendous risks. Because like if your consumers are going to be interacting, for instance, with, let's say, a voice agent or with a textual agent, there's some point where you start to get to a risk of, is everything going to be flat, less, what makes one company different from another, and how do you actually start to think about design and UX differently in those worlds? The analogy I always use is, a few years ago, if you look at a lot of the big retail brands, it was very in vogue to move to black and white logo with sans serif font. And all of a sudden you walk through the mall, you look around, and the logos are indistinguishable. And I think there is a risk with a lot of the user-facing AI that it does become a race to the bottom. So I do think there is an art to this of how do I automate, augment, really transform the things that may happen behind the scenes, the enablers, the process moments, but how do I also preserve those moments that really matter, that define my brand, that define engagement, that are really human and build that connection. And I'd say that's broadly when we talk about, I say use cases have kind of gone away and it's more about the families. I think what we're really seeing is you have to take what I'll call like a whole domain or family of use cases, but how do you actually redesign that journey, that experience, that piece of work, really break it into its little component parts, and like what are those steps that are really automatable, the tedious work someone might not want to do, where AI can take care of that. And then what are the big moments of humanity where there's a thought, a judgment, an application of taste? And how do you actually, one, use AI tooling to make that person even stronger in that moment? But two, how do you not get rid of that humanity in that moment, because that's where it matters? And you almost start to think about the product is the experience. The product is the workflow. The product is not some AI model. It's the operating model that AI is a part of, but not the answer to. And that's, I think, the danger with the use case mindset is a lot of orgs are like, I'm going to do this shiny little use case, give everybody a tool, but all it does is add 20 minutes of work. It doesn't actually change the outcome. And they track it by saying everybody logged into it today. And that's not impact. That's just, performative technology in my mind.
No, 100%. Like that resonates so closely. It's almost like you're describing our business model, because that's basically what we did to architecture, right? Where instead of building a point solution for some feature within architecture that architects could use or developers could use, we created the pipeline, like the steps and the order in which the steps go, and which of the steps need human intervention and which of the steps don't need human intervention across these hundreds of steps that, for an example, goes into designing a multifamily building from start to permits. And that's the process. That's our moat and IP now. It's not necessarily this tool and that tool. I mean, sure, tooling is involved, but it's not about the tool. It's about the workflow and the order, and can you actually get that output? So when you say that, I'm like, yep, that makes perfect sense. So I would love to hear about where you're seeing that happen more. Like, where are you seeing the companies actually using the workflows in a little bit more robust ways? And obviously no needs for companies necessary, but which workflows seem the most ahead from your vantage point?
Yeah, I'd say some of the examples I gave earlier, I think, fall in that. But I think a lot around maintenance and facilities. But everything when you think about the signal of something's wrong, the triage, access to the systems, dispatching folks to come out to your home like you're waiting for today. And then all of the updates, the approvals, how you actually close it out, check the invoice against the accounts payable. But that whole world, I think, is very prime. And I think we're seeing a lot of folks, whether it's, everything from facilities management in an office or an industrial warehouse through to in a multifamily rental building. I think a lot of promise and a lot of really exciting applications happening there. I'd say secondly, going back to the leasing and sales piece I mentioned earlier, how do you start to build, if I take the leasing example, really automate the lead to the lease journey end to end, including can AI schedule the tours? Can you do the qualification? Can you help people better match to buildings? And also really cement those human moments as well around it. I think in particular, a lot of the leasing and those workflows have also proliferated quite a bit because in real estate, a lot of times the tooling for those things lives in a CRM and not in the core ERPs and systems of record. So the integrations are easier. And I think there's also a reality we've been seeing is given the way value from this AI flows through to NOI of the properties, there has been a bias towards AI that drives revenue over AI that drives cost savings. Because until AI becomes more ubiquitous, folks are not going to underwrite in their acquisition models that assume AI operating models of the property if the new buyer doesn't have the same capabilities as the current owner, versus folks will underwrite the higher rent roll all day. So I do think there's been a bias in real estate towards, I'll call it the revenue focus versus the cost use cases on like the owner operator end of things. I think it's a different equation when we're talking about, the facilities manager or the pure third-party operator, where they're thinking about what are all the costs that sit on my books and how do I get to that better economic model. I think we've seen quite a bit on asset management as well in terms of folks thinking about all kind of the manual tasks that happen around investment. And how do you really bolster the judgment moment of ICs and of investors? But thinking about for any investment I'm going to do, the facts that kind of support that investment live everywhere in different systems, in leases, in different dates and key items that are locked around in documents and all the different performance narratives. But how do you take away all the work of having to hunt all that down and do it bespoke for every deal and every process. So I think we're seeing a lot of opportunity there, but I think it's all, when done right, it's how is it done in a way where the tech is making it easier, the tech is taking away all that tedious work, but it's really thinking about AI is not the product. AI is the enabler, and it's also, the product is that whole workflow that includes the AI, also includes the people and the exceptions they're making when it's the big brand choices or big money moves. How is the human in the loop with good information for decision making? Really shifting that product mindset to that broader level of how are you actually architecting a new way of working. And I'd say in the most extreme cases, I'm also seeing folks even rethink who they're hiring because of that. Because when you redo that workflow, if you think about it, the tasks of someone doing marketing of office space today may look very different when 60% of that work is done through AI automation. And what the 40% that's left, where it is thought, it's judgment, it's taste, it's relationships, I may recruit meaningfully differently in terms of who is the profile that is really going to shine and do that work. So I do think that's the other benefit of that domain and workflow posture is in an ideal world, I'm reinventing the work, how it gets done. I'm bringing AI in to really elevate the experience, deliver it better. But you also may think about the human moments differently, even in terms of how you're hiring to really maximize the value.
There's so many different points that you touched on. Everything from it's the front end on the sales revenue generation motion where folks are leaning in first, which sounds kind of obvious. It makes sense why people would start there. But it does sound like people are also investing in that whole saving, from a tenant maintenance standpoint. And I like about the NOI, as you touched on it. That makes me think of, obviously in your research, you found that leading real estate companies have automated more than 70% of tenant interactions, like you said, by using AI, and they're seeing 2 to 4% NOI increases. Now, obviously, that's real money, but the number that really jumped out to me was that a 15% rent premium between the best and the worst performers in the market, driven by customers' experience. How much of that is AI enabled versus just good operations?
Yeah, and I think you're talking about the article we wrote, I think 2 years ago on CX and customer experience. I'd say 2 parts to the answer. I'd say one is we think a lot about just the real growth of brand in this space. But I think for any of the more consumer asset classes, multifamily rentals, branded residential, which we've seen booming in terms of the number of hotels that you can now live in, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I think there's a big part of it, which is the experience. And I think where it becomes AI enabled is a lot of what has now made that possible is AI lets you deliver those moments that might have been really human intensive and by, extension, really expensive as a tenant, but to do it in a scalable way where I don't need the equivalent of hotel staffing to deliver hotel-like hospitality. So I've seen, really innovative players. How do you understand resident satisfaction, but not just take it at a face value versus when we have interactions and tickets, can you run NLP on those and understand sentiment? Can you arm your front line with simple things like recognize somebody's birthday? Or if you're going to give a renewal offer, you might want to give them some type of service concession credit, but you may want to give someone with the dog walking versus someone who has a parking space, a parking credit, if that's an incremental amenity on the property. But that personalization, I think, matters a lot, that AI can power quite a bit. And I think it's also simple things that AI can do in terms of how does the resident feel heard and responded to. And the emblem is how do you build the Domino's pizza tracker of X? And that could be for a maintenance request, but when your pizza has the cheese going on it, when it's hitting the oven, when it goes in the car. But that should be the same for anything. It shouldn't be I shoot a maintenance ticket because my light's out and it sits in the ether for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I want to know
You're
it was
has
seen.
someone seen this? My light is still out. Come fix it.
And maybe if the light bulb's out of stock, tell me that. And we ordered it and it's going to come in and we'll install it when it's there. But a lot of times it's communication in those moments that, matter, where transparency adds a lot of value. And I think AI can be a big driver of those moments. I think it drives it in 2 ways. There is on the operational end, really letting you get to excellence in a way that wasn't feasible. But I think there's on the experiential end of how do you do things at scale that may not have been possible. How do you use technology for those differentiated moments to kind of level up your team? And it may not be the consumer interacting with AI. It may be AI coaching your staff so everybody can level up and have that context. So I think it's a big driver, and I think will continue to be so. And I spend a lot of time in all different parts of real estate. So I also do a lot in hospitality, where I think the same conversation's happening with hotels of how do they get all of the great value but not lose the brand identity in those moments that matter with their users. And how do they also, in a world where search for travel may be totally different, just like search for a home or search for apartment may totally change if it becomes a conversation. What is their role? What is their brand voice? And how do they engage with the consumer in a different way? I mean, big example might be if I imagine a lot of these conversational consumer-facing UIs, it almost creates a moment similar to the OTAs in travel or the listing platforms in owned residential, where it now becomes a new surface of engagement. And there's a little bit of a question of if I'm the end provider of the service, what is my strategy around that new engagement surface?
Yes. All right, we'll bring it home with kind of the last and final personal rapid fire. So definitely don't think, just answer. Coffee or tea, or is just life juice that you're powered on?
I'd say mornings, a cup of coffee, but during the day, tea. I'm a big herbal tea. Like I love a good peppermint tea and just the sprint of mint.
Tea. Yeah. Morning person or night owl?
Both. I'd say a lack of sleep person. My whole life, I am wired where like it's very hard for me to stay asleep for more than maybe 6 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it's just since I was a baby, like it was the bane of my parents' existence going back way back when.
And so now you're just using your powers for the good and solving all the AI problems in real estate.
Yeah, the answer is not morning or night. Hyper person is probably the way to think about it.
Spreadsheets or slide decks?
I'm a visual slide person.
What is the most overused buzzword in real estate AI right now?
Ooh, I mean, I still think it's probably, frankly, use cases. I feel like, and like just over fixated. I heard a great quote the other day that like too many real estate companies treat use cases like Pokemon, where like you got to see them all, collect them all. And like success is I've cataloged 150 of them, even if none of them have created value.
Love it. Use cases. I think you're right. And lastly, what's the one AI tool that you use the most in a day?
Personally, I do a lot of creative writing and like poetry and stuff. And I've been playing a lot more with like Suno AI and some of the music AI models of how do you actually like translate it, play with it. And you can build pretty sophisticated prompts around all of the music properties. I know. It's really interesting to see the application of it.
For Christmas, this is totally random story. My husband he's from Indiana, so he made a song about driving home for Christmas. It was such a catchy song. It was 100% AI. He used, I want to say Sono for the whole process. Yeah, Suno. He used it for the whole process, and now my little 3-year-old likes to hum that catchy song that Daddy made.
I love it. I'm gonna say I went to a conference recently where they made a real estate song with Suno to open up the conference, and it had all of the buzzwords you wanted me to call out earlier for sure, Sandeep.
That's too funny. All right, so last thing. Obviously, you advise the biggest real estate firms on the planet. You see who's getting this right, you see who's kind of fumbling through it or taking the right steps but not there yet. And obviously you're talking to real estate professionals every day who are trying to figure out how to navigate this moment. Some are excited, some are overwhelmed, and most are somewhere in between. What's the one piece of advice you would give to someone in real estate who wants to get AI right, not just adopt it, but actually get value from it?
I would say don't pilot 10 use cases, ship a new workflow or a new domain. Pick a thread of a workflow that has real volume and real pain for your people. Break it down into those steps and those thoughts that we talked about. For those different steps, build little atomic agents, automate it aggressively, but also for the moments of judgment, taste, humanity, protect them deliberately. And I'd say to get from pilot to actual wire it into your systems, really have an organizational view of what are permissions, what are approvals of when AI can act versus a human has to be in the loop. And also think about the change management. And what I mean by that is it's not just we're going to train people to act differently. It's how do you actually build the AI tool and product with the change management built in. So we've done a lot of implementations where the step change thing is actually we're going to build an extra screen where for 2 months, the maintenance team's going to hit approve. Actually gets them to use the AI tools. You can go back to them and say, you hit approve 99% of the time. Why don't we automate this? But there's little things where it's actually the product design that become the unlock.
That's really cool. And the thing that really hits home for me is the value of actual human intellect and actual human thought and protecting that. I think that doesn't get talked about enough. And I think that's such an important point. Well, Alex Wolkomir, partner at McKinsey Company, thank you for bringing the real talk
Thank
today.
you for
This
having
was
me,
so much
Sandeep.
fun.
I had a great time. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for listening to the Real Estate Meets AI podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe on your favorite streaming platform and follow us on social media at cove.inc. Until next time, I'm Sandeep Ahuja.